Hey guys, this is the world famous Kailasa temple at Ellory, and let's look objectively into who could have built this amazing structure. By the end of this video, I hope you will agree with me that our history is completely wrong and that this temple was built by a very advanced civilization. What's so special about this temple? This temple was not constructed by adding stone blocks, but an entire mountain was carved to create this temple. This is the only temple in the whole world where a mountain was cut out from the top to create a structure. In all other temples and caves, even in Ellory and rest of the world, the rock was cut from the front and carved as they went along. The whole world has followed a rock cutting technique called cut-in monolith, while Kailasa temple is the only one that has used the exact opposite technique called cut-out monolith. To see why this rock cutting technique is so different, let's take a look at this pillar that's over 100 feet tall. Notice how small human beings look when compared to this pillar. Normally, to create such a huge pillar, it would take years of work carving accurately on a huge rock. But this pillar was carved by scooping out all the pieces of mountain around it. You can imagine the amount of rock which has been removed to create this pillar. Historians and archaeologists are confused because of the sheer amount of rock that was removed in this temple. Archaeologists confirm that over 400,000 tons of rock had to be scooped out, which would have taken not years but centuries of human labor. Historians have no record of such a monstrous task, and they think that this temple was built in less than 18 years. Let's do a simple math and see if historians could be right. I'm going to assume that people worked every day for 18 years and for 12 hours straight with no breaks at all. I'm going to ignore rainy days, festivals, wartime, and assume that people work like robots ceaselessly. I'm also going to ignore the time taken to create intricate carvings and complex engineering design and planning, and just focus on the removal of rock. If 400,000 tons of rock were removed in 18 years, 22,000 tons of rock had to be removed every year. This means that 60 tons of rock was removed every day, which gives us 5 tons of rock removed every hour. I think we can all agree that it's not even possible today to remove 5 tons of rock from a mountain every hour. Not even with the so-called advanced machines we have. So if it's not humanly possible, was it done by humans at all? Was this created with the help of extraterrestrial intelligence? Now, forget about creating such an extraordinary structure. Can human beings at least destroy this temple? In fact, Aurangzeb, a Muslim king, employed 1,000 workers to completely demolish this temple. In 1682, he ordered that the temple be destroyed so that there would be no trace of it. Records show that 1,000 people worked for 3 years and they could only do a very minimal damage. They could break and disfigure a few statues here and there, but they realized it's just not possible to completely destroy this temple. Aurangzeb finally gave up on this impossible task. Note that this attempted destruction is very similar to another mysterious structure called the Menkaures pyramid in Egypt. Another Muslim ruler wanted all the pyramids to be destroyed and started his work from the Menkaures pyramid. After years of trying, he was only able to make a small dent on the pyramid. He gave up too. Were all these indestructible structures around the world created by extraterrestrials? Is that why human beings are not even able to destroy them? In fact, archaeologists agree that Kailasa Temple was created before any other temple in the Ellora cave complex. Could this have been built centuries before human beings started carving other temples nearby? Is this why the architecture, the design, and the size is so much better and bigger than other temples? If it was built by humans, it's logical to expect that the rock cutting techniques and design would become better over time. People would gain more experience and knowledge and make better structures in the future. However, the Kailasa Temple is the oldest and the biggest temple carved with engineering perfection. Unlike other temples, the Kailasa is the only temple that's visible from the air. Out of 34 temples, all carved side by side, Kailasa Temple stands out and you can see it while flying over it. Is this just a coincidence? Or was it designed for people to see it from the air, like Nazca Lines of Peru? Even on Google Earth, the aerial view of Kailasa Temple clearly shows an X mark. This is how it looks from the top, and you can see a circular design that is studded with 4 lions that create this huge X mark. Was this created as a signal for extraterrestrials who can spot the location while flying? Unlike other temples of Ellora, notice how well its rectangular design is oriented with all the 4 directions. Its entrance faces perfectly to the west. Is this another coincidence too? Unlike most other temples of Ellora, this temple has bridges that connect towers, rainwater harvesting systems, drainage systems, hidden underground passages, secret peepholes that can show people walking in, elaborate balconies in different areas, and complex stairways that connect multiple levels. And all of this had to be planned accurately before they started carving the mountain. For example, you cannot carve these 2 structures separately and then decide to build a bridge later. No connecting rocks or external rocks were used at all, and everything was carved perfectly from one mountain. Do you still believe that this was done with chisels, hammers, and pickaxes by people with limited mathematical and architectural knowledge? I hope we can all agree that the Kailasa Temple was built by a much advanced civilization, whether it originated in Earth or elsewhere. And I'm going to show you some solid evidence about a secret underground area that is hidden under these caves. As you can see, there is a rectangular tunnel about 1 foot wide that is vertically going down and is not open for public access. I asked the security guards if I could take a closer look, and they told me that visitors are not allowed, but they also told me that this tunnel is over 40 feet deep, and then it takes a right angle turn to proceed underground. Nobody knows what's inside after that because the tunnel becomes too narrow for human beings to get through it. Here's another one that is hiding in plain sight. You can see a channel on the ground, and there is a small rectangular opening at the end of this passage that would drain the water to the other side of the temple. But I went to the other side of this rock, but guess what? It's a solid stone. So there is no other way except that this rectangular opening leads to the underground. Notice that the rectangular opening is only large enough for a 10-year-old to go in. Since adult human beings can't access it, was it designed for human beings at all? This is another hidden passage in Ellora caves that I tried to get through, but after 10 feet, it becomes so narrow that I can't go any further. Where do these mysterious tunnels lead? Who could have used such narrow passages? The other important question is, how can you carve such narrow passages if human beings cannot even get through them? Was it carved by human beings at all? Were these carved for extraterrestrials that are smaller than human beings? Notice how this entrance is clearly going underground in this cave temple. These are underground areas hiding in plain sight. The security guards told me that there are several underground tunnels in Ellora caves which gradually become too narrow for human beings to access them, and all of them are locked. From these old doors, we can assume that these tunnels have been closed from public access at least 30 to 40 years ago. These underground tunnels are not found in the same area, but are scattered over many different caves in Ellora, which stretches across a few miles. Is it possible that there could be a vast underground city like Derinkuyu in Turkey? Derinkuyu is an enormous underground city with advanced technical features that could accommodate more than 20,000 people. Remember that Derinkuyu was hidden for centuries only to be discovered in 1965. If it's true that there is a vast underground city in Ellora, shouldn't there be ventilation shafts that would allow air from the ground to reach below? In Derinkuyu, there are thousands of holes drilled from the ground that act as ventilation shafts to the underground city. Look at this long ventilation shaft in Ellora caves that is drilled secretly in a dark chamber. It's about 4 inches wide, but it's so deep that we can't even see the other end. Could this be a ventilation shaft that reaches the underground city? How about this ventilation shaft, which is also going underground? You can also see hundreds of holes like this drilled on the rock floor. Some of them are unfinished and only a few inches deep, but notice how the other holes have been closed with concrete recently. I asked why some of these holes have been closed, and my tour guide told me that someone dropped their car keys into one of them, but these holes are so deep that they could not retrieve it. So they just covered these holes by putting concrete over them. What else could be the purpose of these deep holes on the floor if they are not ventilation shafts? Why would hundreds of holes be drilled on these rock floors with painstaking efforts without any reason? Now, this is one of the abandoned bat-infested places, and let's take a look at what's inside. This seems like a very old sanctum holding a lingam, which is a Hindu god. Centuries ago, plenty of water would be poured on this lingam every day as part of religious worship, and it would drain through this channel. Notice that this water drain has been closed recently with some rocks. Where would the water go? Let's see where it goes. It would go vertically down through this tunnel. Unless there is an area underground, this would be pointless because the water would just overflow all over the place. All over Ellora caves, there are hundreds of idols which would require thousands of gallons of water poured on them every day. Was this a technique to get clean water underground that could be used for different purposes? When water is not being poured in, it would work as a ventilation shaft as well. Was the entire Ellora cave complex built for humans or extraterrestrials to live underground? If so, wouldn't there be at least one carving in Ellora that shows some kind of underground life? How about this carving that shows Nagas or reptilian snake gods doing something clearly underground, right below where Buddha is seated? Notice that they are much smaller in size than Buddha. Could these smaller beings have used the narrow tunnels which are too small for human beings to access? Let's take a look at this carving where it shows two humanoids clearly on the underground level. Notice that the normal human beings are always shown on ground level while the humanoids are shown on the level below them. Again, notice how much smaller the humanoid on the right side is. Ellora Cave Complex has 3 different religious temples carved side by side. There are Buddhist, Hindu, and Jain temples which follow different scriptures and mythologies. The strangest thing about Ellora Caves is that these snake gods and humanoids are shown underground in all the different religious temples. This is a Hindu temple and you can see humanoids living underground. This is a Buddhist temple and it shows Nagas or reptilians underground, and this is a Jain temple and you can see underground humanoids as well. Why do all these different religions show Nagas and humanoids as smaller than human beings, and all these carvings show them at a level below where the human beings are? Notice how there is a clear indication of different levels, which clearly shows humanoids and even cattle living underground. Remember that Derinkuyu in Turkey has 8 levels underground, and remains of cattle were found during excavation. Are these carvings a clear indication of an underground city that was built under Ellora Caves? I went online and tried to find if anyone knew about this underground city in Ellora. There was nothing mentioned about Ellora Caves, but I found 2 maps from different sources that show underground areas all over the world. The first one was from a research group called Leading Edge, and it accurately points to the exact location of Ellora Caves. I found another map which is supposedly from KGB, and this map too clearly shows that there is an underground base located precisely at Ellora Caves. And these sources claim that these underground areas are not just small tunnels, but vast underground cities covering miles and miles of territory. With all these evidences, I think there is no doubt that there is an underground city hidden under Ellora Caves. What do you think? Please do let me know your opinion. Thank you for watching and talk to you soon.